This cozy Christmas spice once sparked massacres, empire wars, and even a deal that traded Manhattan for a tiny jungle island. I used to think of nutmeg as nothing more than a holiday garnish. Then I found out that this single seed, grown on a handful of volcanic islands that most people have never heard of, became one of the most fought-over commodities in human history. Banda sits alone in the Banda Sea, a scatter of volcanic islands where nutmeg, Myristica fragrans, first took root. For centuries, these trees grew nowhere else. Their fruit splits open to reveal a glossy brown seed, the nutmeg, wrapped in a vivid red web. That red is mace, a second spice, clinging tightly to the kernel. Both are born from the same fruit, hidden in a place most will never see. The trees dig deep into Banda's volcanic slopes, thriving where ash and rain mix. Over 3,000 millimeters of rain fall each year, but it is uneven, one hillside drenched, another sun-baked. These microclimates are a quiet gift. Bandanese growers can stagger their harvests, gathering ripe fruit nearly all year. Their methods are old, shaped by the land and the weather, timing the pick with the moon, waiting for the fruit's yellow-green skin to split and flash that red lace. Harvesters tap high branches with long poles, letting ripe drupes drop onto woven mats. By hand, they peel away the husk, strip off the mace, and dry both seed and aril in the sun. The work is careful, almost ceremonial, passed down through oral calendars tied to tides and the flowering of other trees. Yet the system is fragile. Banda's nutmeg comes from just a few square kilometers of forest, each tree taking nearly a decade to mature. A single storm or blight could wipe out the crop. Still, for generations, Bandanese growers managed these groves, trading seed and mace across Asia. Every nutmeg seed carries the memory of rare soil and careful hands. Nutmeg did not just drift out of Banda by accident. Its journey started on ships that threaded through the Indian Ocean, captained by traders who treated the Banda Islands like a state secret. Arab, Malay, Indian and Chinese merchants all played their part. They carried nutmeg, Myristica fragrans and its red lace of mace into packed markets from Calicut to Guangzhou, but they guarded the source with a kind of conspiratorial precision. Directions in Arabic geographies and Chinese chronicles read like riddles. Instead of naming Banda, they described it as the islands beyond the sunrise, or the fragrant lands south of the Great Clove ports. Even tribute missions to the Ming court listed nutmeg among their offerings, but never spelled out where it came from. I spent a whole afternoon reading translated logs from Zheng He's fleet. These were epic Ming voyages. The Mao Kun map, for example, hints at spice islands in the Western Ocean, but leaves out names on purpose. The secrecy was not just about profit, it was about survival. If you are moving something worth its weight in gold, you do not advertise the map coordinates. Malay and Arab traders even used decoy cargoes and vague shipping routes to throw off rivals. I have to admit, the level of cloak and dagger here puts modern trade secrets to shame. This was not some primitive backwater either. These merchant networks ran on contracts, multilingual guilds, and a deep knowledge of monsoon winds. They built trust with coded language and alliances, not just brute force. The Bandanese themselves rarely traveled far, but their nutmeg reached as far as Venice and Cairo, always with its true origin blurred, like a rumor that never quite lands. It is wild to realize that for centuries, the world's entire supply of nutmeg came from a place most people could not even find on a map, and that was entirely by design. If you ever wonder why European explorers risked so much to find Banda, this is why. Everyone wanted in on the secret, but only a handful knew where to look. Nutmeg's arrival in Europe sparked a frenzy that was equal parts superstition and status. In plague-ridden cities, fear shaped daily life. Manuals from the early 1600s advised steeping half a nutmeg in red wine to ward off the deadly bad air. Apothecaries stocked whole nutmegs as plague charms, listing them alongside ginger and frankincense in their ledgers. People tucked nutmeg seeds into their clothing or carried them in silver boxes, hoping for protection. The idea that a spice could shield you from death might sound far-fetched now, but in a world gripped by epidemic, desperation blurred the line between medicine and magic. For Europe's elite, nutmeg became more than a remedy. It was a symbol of power. At banquets, hosts displayed ornate silver nutmeg graters, some so finely crafted they resembled jewelry. A glimpse of one in a museum, engraved, delicate, almost regal, says everything about the message they wanted to send. To serve nutmeg at your table was to announce that you could afford something more precious than gold. Even the ritual of grating it into wine became a performance of wealth. Whenever rumors of plague spread, demand soared. Apothecaries could not keep nutmeg on their shelves. People believed it could purify the air, sweeten the blood, and keep families safe. Panic, rumor, and hope all drove prices higher. The scramble for nutmeg was not just about taste or health. It was about survival and social standing, a fever that would soon send ships racing toward the Banda Islands. The irony? Nutmeg's supposed magic had limits. In large doses, it is toxic. Myristicin can cause confusion, nausea, even hallucinations. Portuguese ships cut through the fog and surf of the Indian Ocean in the early 1500s, chasing rumors of a hidden spice island. For them, nutmeg was not just a flavor, it was a ticket to riches and power, maybe even immortality if you believed half the stories floating around Lisbon's docks. Afonso de Albuquerque, the Portuguese viceroy, had already muscled his way into Malacca by 1511, but his real prize lay farther east. The Portuguese rounded the Cape of Good Hope, mapped treacherous new routes, and kept pushing, driven by the idea that if they could find the source, they could own the trade. I remember reading one of Albuquerque's letters. He writes about the Banda Islands like they are Atlantis, a place half real, half dream, but worth risking everything for. When his captains finally reached Banda, they did not come as humble customers. They came to break the old rules of buying and selling, to seize the secret for themselves. The Bandanese had spent centuries trading with Asian merchants on their own terms, but now European ambition was crashing ashore. The Portuguese arrival was not just another chapter in the spice trade. It was the moment the game changed. From negotiation and secrecy to maps, cannons, and the first European foothold in the island's tangled story. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, was founded in 1602 with a charter that gave it sweeping powers, including the authority to wage war, build forts, and rule distant islands. Its directors, the Heren 16th, demanded total control over the Banda Islands' nutmeg and mace. The Perkin system forced Bandanese farmers into contracts that stripped them of their harvests and threatened them with eviction, forced labor, or worse. The company's language was clinical, but its actions were ruthless. In 1621, Jan Pieterszoon Coen arrived with 3 warships and 2,000 men. Banda's population before the invasion stood at 12,000. Afterward, fewer than 2,000 survived. Most were killed, deported, or enslaved. Company records tried to frame the massacre as order restored, but the ledgers tell another story: systematic violence, forced surrender, a culture erased. Fort Nassau, built in 1609, was reinforced, and by 1624, Fort Belgica dominated the island, its walls looming over fields now worked by enslaved laborers. The VOC monopoly was sealed with blood and stone. The Treaty of Breda in 1667 reads like a punchline to a centuries-long joke, except the joke cost lives and changed continents. In that treaty, Dutch and English diplomats sat across a table and traded the tiny nutmeg island of Run for Manhattan. Yes, that Manhattan. At the time, the Dutch were convinced they had bagged the better deal. Run's nutmeg output was worth a king's ransom in Europe, while Manhattan was just a muddy outpost. Every time I think about it, I cannot decide whether to laugh or groan. Imagine swapping New York City for a speck of volcanic dirt, all because of a spice that now sits forgotten at the back of a kitchen drawer. But control never lasts. Smuggling and espionage chipped away at the Dutch monopoly. My favorite story comes from the memoirs of Pierre Poivre, the Frenchman who, in the 1770s, pulled off the botanical equivalent of a heist movie. Poivre and his agents snuck nutmeg seedlings out of the Banda Islands and planted them in Mauritius and Reunion. He wrote about disguising the seedlings and bribing local guards, all to break the Dutch stranglehold. Within a generation, nutmeg trees took root across the Indian Ocean and the Caribbean. The price crashed. The monopoly was done. I get a weird sense of satisfaction out of that, watching a secret so fiercely guarded finally slip through the cracks and become something anyone could grow, anywhere. It is wild to think that the same spice that once inspired massacres and empires now gets sprinkled almost carelessly over a holiday latte. Every time I grate nutmeg over coffee, I picture Banda's jungles and VOC cannons. Whole empires for a single seed, Myristica fragrans. Centuries of secrecy, blood, and rumor still linger in our kitchens. Ordinary doesn't always mean innocent. What other everyday objects hide this kind of past? Let me know below.